When you feel defeated and when you are indeed defeated, the Azeris were disseminating hatred towards Armenian. Now we have Armenians. Now it seems that the roles have changed. What shall we do? Are we going to do the same, or we have to have a different approach and pattern? I think having the same behavior is wrong. Unfortunately, we have to confess that both we and Azerbaijan during those years were in the same civilization framework with the same values or system of values. What do I mean when I say system of values? Neither in Armenia nor in Azerbaijan, the human life was not the greatest value. It was not personocentric, and in this case, because the system is the same, we both were in immoral situation, and it was cruel. And we also conclude from that system that in order to win, you have to be cruel. And if we adopt the same way, we will lose, because we will never have that negative potential to win in terms of allies, in terms of resources, in terms of wealth. We have to find another way. I'm convinced with that. Many new countries have actually adopted a different way of development after they suffered a defeat. Just remember what happened after the Second World War. Germany, Italy, and Japan were defeated countries. They lost the war, but they refused to continue with the ideology that they had before the war. They rejected that, and they refused to consider themselves to be defeated or losers. They realized that the revenge is on the other side of the field. Germany is the most developed country in Europe. Japan is one of the most developed countries in the world, Italy as well. And those who have chosen the path of hatred, and the victor country in the Second World War is no longer present on the map. So it depends on what type of civilization you choose and what kind of system of values you choose. But when Germany accepted its defeat in the Second World War, Germany also confessed of being guilty. So they actually recognized their guilt. We are not dealing with the same situation. In our case, the guilt should be quite different. We had made mistakes and errors just because the human being was not at the center of our civilization, was not the core value of our system. And I don't consider Azerbaijan to be victorious in this war as well. At least the stance that the Azeri society, or the majority of Azeri society and the ruling clique have, does not speak about the fact that they are victors. They are still being guided by hatred, because hatred is more characteristic to a loser, but they still maintain that stance. I'm not going to enter into geopolitics, but here it is not possible to celebrate victory, both in terms of territorial integrity, in terms of having foreign bases present on your territory, etc. So it's not that unequivocal and clear. Again, speaking about the system of values. When at the core of your system of values is the territory, then let's say getting more territories is victory. I don't want to be cynical, but let's leave aside, let's say, the issue of refugees, 100,000 people who have returned to, or people who have returned to Artsakh, and it's not clear what is the situation there. But Azerbaijan, in its own territory, has 2 foreign country armies present, or armed forces present. Let's rewind a bit back and recall what Azeris wanted after the independence. They wanted to have a country free of any foreign armed forces. They were declaring that they're not going to be part of any military alliance. Were they successful to that? No. Even if they are not officially part of any alliance, but in reality, in practice, de facto, it exists with Turkey, with Pakistan, which there is so-called Union of Islamic States, etc. And secondly, whatever they thought that they got rid of a foreign military base, they now have. Geographically, now they have a military base located on the territory of Azerbaijan. It is easy to get that base in. It is very difficult to get that base out. I know that many Azerbaijanis do not consider this to be a victory. And when they think about this globally and try to move beyond this national pressure or stream, if you wish, they do not consider this to be victory. So we're saying that a human being should be at the heart of our system of values. Are we able to do that? I think yes. Human being is the highest value, and everything should serve a human being. Life is the greatest treasure. Countries that accept as a principle their development, human development, national development, state development, are usually progressing, and they are more developed today than they were yesterday. This is the goal that has each and every human being, every nation, every state. And you develop your consciousness and understanding as well. A human being is a cosmic phenomenon. And the cognition of a human being and understanding is as unlimited as the space itself. All other limitations which are imposed are trying to convince you that the planet is plane, it is located on 3 elephants, etc., and it has edges. But otherwise, we as human beings have no limitations of our thinking. Our development doesn't have any limitations because the space itself is not limited and the space is also developing. The cosmos itself is developing. All other issues become secondary, tertiary, or primary, but not the most important ones. The victor is that one who develops. Those who are stagnant, who are looking always back, who are living in myths, do not have chances for development. They do not develop. But it is so difficult to move away from the world of myths and legends. In the post-Soviet era, we are facing this reality when the myth is coming face to face with reality. The myths are often winning. If we declare that life is the greatest value, then the reality becomes life, myth becomes death. If we talk about development of our ideas, of our thinking, those become our values. If we refuse to accept the reality and live in myth, in our culture, we actually praise death, not life. Unfortunately, this is a widespread phenomenon in our culture. The only meaning of death is death for life. You cannot live for death. If you accept this format, and by the way, this is the most natural format because people want to live. A young person wants to live, wants to develop. We start to impose then limitations. You cannot move beyond this. You cannot think beyond this border. It is actually impedes us from protecting our important traditions and ideas, etc. So if you're not working harmoniously with life, you are falling behind. Life is not telling you that I will wait until you will realize your cognition will reach the level that you are in the 21st century and we have to go together. Life will progress and you will fall behind. You said whether we can do that as nation or as people, whether it's characteristic of us or not. I think this is artificial approach, even false approach, and I will explain why. In order to prove that it is false, God has allowed to have North and South Korea with same 5,000 years of history, with same culture, with same language, but two different states. The country was divided about 60 years ago, in 1953. So it's less than 70 years, okay. One is one of the most developed countries in the world, perfectly maintaining its natural tradition culture. The second one is one of the least developed ones. They are living separately only for the last 70 years. And here you have exactly a case when the mind or understanding or idea and your approach to life changes everything. There is no other explanation why one is the most progressive, the other one is the most regressive country in the world. This is not the first talk. I don't remember even whether it's the sixth or seventh talk about future. And when I ask what shall we do now, people are saying live, simply live. But I believe simply living is not sufficient. It means not developing. And I would like to continue your idea, your thoughts that we have to develop, we have to move forward. But it's difficult. Simply living is much easier. No, no, I think no. We are human beings after all. And simply living or feeding us or filling our stomachs, we sometimes have also other manifestations, presentations as human beings. And this is part of development. Life is becoming more interesting when there is development because every day you discover new horizons. If there is no such development and you simply live without anything, you just repeat every day whatever you do. Yes, yeah, and that's how I waste my time. Then life becomes pointless, meaningless. Life is too short. You have to fill it with some substance, with content, with interest. And we have to understand that you give this to the next generation. You remember we have an Armenian saying, live children, but live not as we have lived. If we live every day the same, our message will never reach its target. And the next generation will live the same way. They will remember saying that my grandfather was saying, I remember this, and they will say something stupid because the same grandpa may say something actually wise and stupid at the same time. Life should be interesting. Life becomes interesting when you fill it with new content. Because life is, after all, a dialogue. You are in dialogue with nature, with different people, with arts, with culture, with science. Why are we diminishing our life? Artificially draw some borders which are not interesting. And there is also something important. You must be interesting yourself. You are much more attractive when you are an interesting person than when you are not an interesting person. So it's funny. Our dialogue reaches some point and then we stop. And this line where we stop is probably the idea of responsibility. I'm grateful for the question. I think you are referring to a very important point. I would say that responsibility equals to freedom. There is no freedom without responsibility, and there is no responsibility without freedom. This is the approach of the master, of the owner. If I am the master and if I am free in my actions, I'm responsible for my actions. I'm responsible for this country regardless of who is the president, who is the prime minister, whether I have elected them or not. My attitude towards the country should not change. I am the owner of this country because I'm a free person. And if I made a mistake, mistakes are also for human beings, but you have to understand your mistake. And this is an important human characteristic, human trait. We cannot be infallible. Moreover, I always tell my students, always look for a mistake inside of yourselves. Even if you are not that guilty, it is better to take the biggest portion of the guilt on yourself. It could be more useful than if you start looking for those who are guilty. Accept yourself. Because if you understand and confess your mistakes, your guilt, then you develop. But it is extremely difficult to confess, to accept own mistakes, confess them. And most importantly, repent. When you're a free person, it's not that difficult. People who are not free are afraid of that. They think that if they accept their own guilt or mistake, they will disappear. How can I be wrong? I'm trying to go back again to this idea of a free person. Free is not a person who doesn't have any limitations. Freedom is responsibility, and if I'm responsible, I'm responsible for my own mistakes and to some extent also for mistakes of others. And it doesn't annihilate me. It gives me a chance to choose another path. There is also here the idea of being on alert, sober, I would say, looking through the real lenses to your past and making proper assessments, proper analysis. Because I may also do a wrong analysis of my past. A past is a good textbook. But it doesn't mean that we are good students of the past. We're often saying that a past is a good teacher, is a good textbook. We have to learn our lessons from the past. Learn it. You cannot repeat the same mistakes for 3,000 years and then call it Armenian destiny. Don't repeat the same mistakes. Why then this past that you call a textbook is not teaching you the lesson proper way? And you have different students. There are students who like to learn and those who do not learn. There are students who think or who may feel that if they're not actually going to report today on the lessons, they do not need to actually learn, but it will definitely impact their future. Lesson is not for only answering to the questions asked by teachers. It's the basis, the foundation that you build in order to move forward and up. And it's not only the past that is a good textbook. Life of your neighbors, life of other nations are also good textbooks. A few years ago, we were in Bulgaria, where with the theater on tour, there were rocks, and the trees were growing from the rocks, from the cliffs. And I showed them that look how you can stand tall even in the most difficult environment. You can find wonderful examples in the animal world, in nature, and you should not say that he is from this nation, I don't have anything to learn from them. You have to learn from those who defeated you to understand how it happened that they defeated me. Again, returning to what you have said, cruelty is a false value. However, if we are learning from the enemy, then we have to be more cruel than they are. It's not that you have to learn everything from your enemy. In our case, what did the enemies do? In foreign policy, they tried to actually organize legal framework for their actions. Decisions by the European Union, resolutions of the UN Security Council. There were also some resolutions of the Union of Islamic States, and they provided some grounds for their actions. We on our side, we left the armed forces at the level of Fedai movement or freedom fighters movement. Form your regiments, organize, self-organize yourself, move. Besides, and we stepped down. There was also another issue. We were blockaded, and no one stepped up to actually criticize them because they were providing actually some legal grounds and some reasons for that. And cruelty never leads to victory, and it will still work against them. It's not that the world is saying more cruel is better, but you have to be very principled. You have to say that I am in this field of civilization. I am living in humanistic world, which we never did. We had 1001 geopolitical reasons. We were forced to be acting like that because we're living with these neighbors. And then we're complaining why the world is not responding. But what we have responded to, what was the humanitarian problem, global problem that we responded to? We always have chosen the wrong side. Let's go a bit back in our discussion. We were approaching the topic and then we were stopping without getting into that. It's the topic of generations. We are from the same generation. We may expect something from the future generations. I'm sure they're also expecting something from us. But we can speak on behalf of our generation only. What would you expect from future generations, from our children, grandchildren? We have touched bases of on the topic. I mean, we expect development. I actually expect and receive many things from youth. Uh, uh, Expectations from my own generation are not always coming true, are not fulfilled. I'm often telling them, if you cannot help, don't get on the way. There is new generation. They have different, let's say, life tempo. They have different way of communicating. They are using different medium for communication, and the youth that I am dealing with now, they are much better than I was at their age. They have much wider thinking, broader thinking. They are much more developed. They are freer than we are. What do we expect from them? We expect that they will become the masters of this country, the owners of this country. And for that, they have to be free and responsible. That's it. In one of your interviews, to the question what to do, you said, oh, you should not become evil. You have to build bridges with everyone. Do good, enter in water, and you may have a continuation of that. Do good and build bridges over the water. Evil is, I would say, fruitless. Whatever is born of love. This is the rule of nature. So if we think that we can get somewhere, even if we have, I would say, justified anger, we will not get there. And life has shown many examples. People are not uniting around evil because people then start complaining. We are evil, but whatever we're saying is right, is justified, why people do not believe us. Retain your principality, get rid of evil. You will see how many people will get around you, but without any negative, without any evil. Our time is not over yet, but I would like to use this opportunity provided to us by internet. I would like to stop our dialogue, our discussion. My guest was art director and Professor Ruben Babayan. We have discussed about main fundamental values, which my guest sees as very positive and important for our future. If you like it. If you would like, share it. If you want, you can